This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshido. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do. What's up, y'all? Adam Hoots here, the Lean Builder Hoots on the Ground podcast with No Bullshido. And I'm coming to you today with a super special guest, Mr. Matt Olshefski. Matt, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here.
I'm super excited to be here, Adam. It was great to meet you in person at LCI Congress this past few weeks.
Heck yeah, we had a blast down there in NOLA, as they say, learning about how we can get better in construction, how we can all come together as one. And yeah, I had just a blast with you. I mean, we hung out on what was the name of the street?
Bourbon Street.
Yeah, we hung out on Bourbon Street. We had some oysters. We had a good time. You were good people, man. I enjoyed hanging with you so much. I had to bring you on the podcast and tell the world about you. So I'm excited to introduce the Lean Builder Nation to you. Why don't you take a few minutes and just tell us who you are, Matt?
Sure. Well, my name is Matt Olshefski. I'm 52, and I'm a husband to my bride, Heidi. And actually, today is our 26th anniversary today, our wedding anniversary.
No way. Happy anniversary.
Thank you, magic. It is magic. And she's been my real champion since we met. So that's a special thing. I'm the father of an Eagle Scout, and he's currently in law enforcement in another state. And we did well with him, and I'm real proud father. And I'm still a scouter. I'm a troop committee chairman for my troop. I took over that role to help run the troop in a transition. And we do a lot of community service. We did a really big food drive. It was like 9,500 pounds of food we brought in on Saturday. And it was a lean production, taking in that much food and processing it for that. I could tell you that. And it had nothing to do with me and how I ran it. It was an organic thing that scouting just does that. So it's a beautiful thing.
How many people can you feed with 9,500 pounds of food?
Well, it's our food pantry in our town. It's their biggest food drive that they have every year. I don't know how many people we feed, but it's the biggest one. This will take them for several months.
My goodness, that's wild.
And, I do that and a lot of other things. And, I've been a project superintendent with O&G Industries. Actually, it's the anniversary of that this week, too.
Lots going on in your life, huh? How many years have you been with O&G?
5 years. It's my fifth anniversary.
Love it. What else? Tell me more.
Tell you more? Well, my road into construction was an unorthodox one. I always had a bit of trouble in high school and I didn't do so well with stuff. But I kind of turned my act around right as I was getting out of high school and just sort of wandered from job to job, doing retail, doing this and that. And eventually I found my way into healthcare, where I worked in group homes, helping developmentally disabled adults. And, teaching a day program and taking these folks out into the community every day. And I did that for several years, and the pay was good. The hours were nice. And I was making I also have been a volunteer firefighter for 27 years. I'm no longer a volunteer firefighter since I got heavy into the superintendent stuff. I had to back away from some of my commitments, but there was a lot of continual improvement in all of my work since I got out of retail. There's always classes to take. There's always ways to get better at what you do, find the joy in what you're doing. And, and I made my way into durable medical equipment for the last few years of my careers before construction, right? BC. And when I was doing durable medical equipment, I was actually a wheelchair repairman and eventually became the service manager of that place and started working on ways to improve things in that business and learning an awful lot in order to keep doing that. And in 1999, the company I was working for got bought out, and I was the recipient of a layoff slip because they didn't need two service managers. And off I was, unemployed. And that brings me to my first construction job, where the chief of the fire department had a brother who worked at a construction company and said, "Hey, these guys are hiring laborers. Why don't you give them a call and fill out an application?" And that started my journey into construction from laborer to superintendent. And there was a little bit in between that, Adam, I can tell you that.
You've got my mind all over the place and I got questions galore, but let's rewind it
Yeah.
all the way back to it's your anniversary today, right? And
Yeah.
did you say you've been married for 26 years?
It's 26 years today.
26 years
Yeah.
today.
We met in 1990. So we've been together that long.
How does that happen?
Well, it happens just like you and I meeting. I think it's synchronicity. I think the people that God was meant to put in my life were put in my life, and I'll never forget meeting her in the A&P parking lot on a random weeknight. And I was even flirting with her girlfriend when she pulled up with her sister and jumped out of the car. It was fantastic. I was smitten from the start, and she wouldn't even give me her number, but that worked out, obviously.
Interesting. But so how, like, again, I'm kind of stuck on that thought because it's a rare thing these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately. And so like start there. Like how do you maintain a relationship for 26 years?
Well, we maintained the marriage for 26 years. It's a lot about trust. It's a lot about the vulnerability, and making sure that you talk about things, make sure that you listen to things. I mean, we've had our ups and downs with that stuff where I wasn't so good at it. I mean, there was a period when I was working for another company that you know, my whole job was very fearful based. Like I was always worried about losing that job, and that's a stressful thing, and you bring that home with you every day, and that becomes stressful in the relationship. And I had to learn to talk it out and really be a partner. Let her in on my life at work as well, and don't be afraid to share it.
Yeah, that's huge. Tell me more about mixing those lines.
Well, it's a lot easier today. I mean, these days it's simple. I mean, my journey to lean, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But my journey to lean really changed how I do things at work. Turn this from a job that I hold and a title that I hold to a real career. I mean, it's definitely, I feel that way about this. This is my career. I'm proud of what I do. I'm proud to be a superintendent. And when I bring that home, I mean, it wears off naturally because I don't have any anxiety that I'm bringing home from work with me. I'm able to lock that gate at 4 o'clock and come home.
I like it. I think that's huge. Again, I think there's so much that can be learned from the relationships we have outside the gate and how things that we can take from that and apply it to folks inside the gate, I think is huge. And Jen and Jesse, they talk a lot about that with their Lean and Love, that book that just came out. I get caught up on that a lot because again, just like you, my lean journey has really changed the way that I operate in both the work setting and at home. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I think it's important to just kind of pause and reflect and note that from time to time. And again, 26 years is a long time. So congratulations. Hopefully you're leaving work early today, maybe getting some flowers or something. What are the plans for tonight?
Definitely going to get some flowers, and I'll leave on time at a minimum for sure. The plans for tonight, I actually have to go to Scouts tonight. It's routine. We've got a wake for a friend of the family, and life goes on. But we are going to celebrate in a much more formal style this weekend. So
Fair.
Plans.
Fair. Well, maybe you can do something else. Maybe you can put Scouts on pause for the night. I don't know.
I could. I definitely could, but I do have to cook this Saturday, so I need to get some gear.
There you go. You're a cooker?
Yeah, I like
Definitely
cooking in those cast iron Dutch ovens over coals in a fire. I'm a camper. I love outdoors. So.
Nice. So favorite meal to cook is what?
Oh gosh, I believe it or not, it's a sautéed vegetable meal that I make in the Dutch oven. It's to die for. So
Interesting. Huh. Never pinned you as a chef, but I know who's feeding me next time we're around.
I could do that.
Let's see. So take me through, I guess, your construction experience. You said you've been with O&G Industries for 5 years. You started as a laborer. You're now a superintendent. I want to hear all about that journey because I think that's, again, that's part of the reason we're here to learn from that experience and help maybe inspire and encourage the next generation. So what do you got? Take us down that road.
Well, I started with this company as a laborer in 1999. My wife was expecting a baby, and so I was hungry, needed the job, and I wanted to impress, so I embraced the role. And I was working on both ends of the state here in Connecticut, and a little bit into New York, and I would drive, probably 50, 60 miles to get to the job site in the morning, and then work overtime and then work on the other side of the state, same amount of mileage, and work overtime. And they gave me all the overtime I want. And, I learned a lot rolling those frost blankets. I ran a ground heater as my first real role. They needed someone to do that. And so, running the ground heater and putting the frost blankets down involved shoveling snow, cleaning up, waiting for the work to get done, which was the worst part because, those concrete finishers typically don't finish till around midnight in the wintertime, right? Waiting for that concrete to set up. And when my son was born, it was a wonderful thing, but I actually had to walk away from the blanket rolling and the ground heater that night. I was on the job and got called away, and someone else had to come in and finish for me. But at some point I was asked to sit on a job site that it was a third shift job, and they didn't have any supers to cover it, and we needed someone there. And it was a warranty project at Otis Elevator World Headquarters in Farmington, Connecticut. And they had this escalator with these, and it was a cascading series of sinks that had river stone in them, and it was a water feature on the side of an escalator that was leaking into the escalator pit. And they had been through 2 or 3 different supers going through the same motions on night shift, taking it apart, ripping out all the caulk, sealing things, caulking things, trying to find out what the cause was. And I showed up just as a laborer with a khaki pants, collared shirts, and a notepad just to look like a super. I was far from it. And by this point, I had all of like a year's experience, maybe even a little less. And I was there, and I just was inquisitive. I was curious. I took notes. I asked the guys who were doing the caulking for the sinks, what do you think's going on? And they said, well, I think it's not this. I've ripped out perfectly good caulking 3 times now, and this is the 4th, and this is not where your leak is. I guarantee it. And so that got me thinking as to what it was. And I dug in a little deeper and actually found the cause after we finished that last round of redoing work, right? Redoing work. So it was a lot of wasted effort there. But I did determine that the granite itself was porous, and that the water that was running down the face of the fountain next to the escalator was actually wicking through. Like if you poured water on a sponge, it was actually pulling it through the other side. And it always happened after everybody left because it's a slow process doing that. And that actually turned that into a profitable enterprise for our company, because now it was a design flaw and an error and omission. And we were able to push that through. And I gave those notes to my boss, and he gave me a promotion to be a foreman as a labor foreman, which in that company just meant that you were kind of in charge, more like an assistant super for the superintendent on the jobs, because these were CM jobs. But the big break from that was that when the time came for a project where they needed someone to fill the role of the safety guy on a 2-year owner control insurance program job at a pharmaceutical plant, I was the guy that was selected, and that was my school. I spent 2 years with nothing to do except for remind people to put their glasses on and read the OSHA book. And I used that time to just drink it up, soaking it up, the information. I learned about the CSI divisions. I'd never heard of that. Before I started as a laborer, I didn't even own a tool belt, Adam. I had to go buy a hammer and a tool belt and a razor knife. That was me walking in the door from healthcare. It's been quite a journey. After that job, I started as assistant superintendent and started helping and running different parts projects. And some of them were quite involved. I would be in charge of like all of the site work and the parking garage and different things. But in 2005, this is like the real closing in on my journey to superintendent. In 2005, my brother, who lived in Mississippi at the time, was quite sick, and we started looking, and because he needed a kidney transplant. Now, you and I have a little something in common.
I know something about that.
Yeah, you do. And when I heard your podcast on that, I was like, man, someday I need to talk to this guy. You know, so the journey that my brother was on was a difficult one, and he was on dialysis, and the search was on to find a donor, and I was the first in line to get that first blood test. And if anyone's listening to this, all it takes is a blood test to find out if you're even eligible to do it. And there's a series of tests that happens after that. By the time you're done with all the tests, you're qualified to ride on the space shuttle. I guarantee you. It's a lot of tests. I did a kidney transplant with my brother in 2005. And I went down to where he lived in Mississippi, because the transplant centers all revolve around where the recipient lives. And so I did the transplant down there at University of South Alabama in Mobile. And we went through that. But the week before that, I got to visit a lot of people down on the Gulf Coast. And in 2005, less than a month after I flew home, leaving my brother behind, Hurricane Katrina hit and wiped out that area. I mean, we were just there in New Orleans, and that whole city was underwater, and a lot of that was man-made disaster caused because of failure of systems and failure of people to take care of those things. But where my brother was, it was a 28-foot storm surge. It was frightening. He was okay. He was inland just enough that it didn't flood at his house. But man, that was a terrible time. And I was on, what do you call it, the medical leave for that, temporary medical leave to recover from that. And I was able to get a hold of the fire department down there, being a fireman myself. And I called them, and I just need to know he's okay, because there was no phones and everything. And once we landed that he was okay, I was like, okay, well, what about you guys? Are you okay? The fire department. And they had said that they were knocked down pretty hard, but their sister station on the coast was completely wiped out. And they gave me a phone number of this guy, Chief Mike, down there, and I got to call him, and I said, all right, hey, you guys are banged up pretty bad. What do you need? I'm sitting at home. I can get things that you need. And we did that. I wound up setting up a drive from firefighters for firefighters through my fire department, and got all kinds of departments all around to donate AEDs, turnout gear, boots, the books. I wanted to get all the things that I knew the insurance company would never replace, and just get it in their hands, including some trinkets for the families and the firefighters. And man, I did that while I was on leave. And I've got some relationships and some friendships that'll last forever. And the fire department actually named me firefighter of the year that year. And that's a pretty proud thing. My name's up on a plaque on a wall in the fire department. And that was from my journey for kidney. And that was one of the most profound things I was involved with. It was a pretty big thing. And when I came back to work, I was on light duty, and I was handed my first superintendent job. And it was a little renovation job at Quinnipiac University down here in Connecticut. And it was wonderful. I remember it like it was yesterday, Adam. The boss met me on the job, and he says, I know you don't know what you need to know in order to do what I'm asking you to do. And that's okay. I'm expecting you to make mistakes, but you're not allowed to screw up. And then he walked away, and I've got the plans and the keys, and the other superintendent showed me where the bathroom was, and I was on my own, man. And that was my start. That's how it all began.
And you made it work too. Clearly you're still in the business. Man, your story touches me in so many ways, because giving an organ to another human being is like the most selfless move that any human could ever make. And so, one, I thank you for that, because I know firsthand what it's like to be on dialysis, and that's like the most miserable time in anybody's life. And so if you know somebody on dialysis, please reach out to them. Just say hi. They're lonely. They're around blood all the time, and the beeping and the machines and the lack of sleep. It's painful in itself. And so I guess, why are you such a giver? It seems like you're donating, whether it's through the firefighting or it's through Boy Scouts of America, and donating food or donating an organ or your time to this podcast. Like, why are you such a giver?
It's a tough question to answer because it's uncomfortable to get in that zone, but I'm a giver because I get from it. Those returns from those relationships are way bigger than what I gave. You know, I volunteered scouting for the journey that I went on with my son. I can never repay that back. What we got as a family, I could never repay back. And so I'm repaying it back by continuing to be involved. You know, there's going to be a time when I can't do it, and that'll be fine, but I'll feel I have given my part back, you know, and given forward. This is part of continual improvement, being on the podcast here today. Proud to do it, happy to do it. You know, I enjoyed our conversations in New Orleans, and I was looking forward to, you know, the back and forth with you on this.
Well, you're crushing it. You brought tears to my eyes earlier when you reminded me that you're a donor, but don't people take advantage of the giving? Like, that doesn't stop you from continuing to give.
No, because I do it in a healthy way. There's a line, you know, there is a line. The line stops when it interferes with family. I can give at work every day when I'm on the job site, when I'm interacting with my fellow crews out here, right? But I don't find that I let people take advantage of it because I'm not just giving. It's more like sharing because it's reciprocal.
I love that. That's incredible. Man, your experience has me enamored a little bit off of the beaten path with the questions I asked you to prepare for, which is what I love the most about this podcast. I'm super interested in the comparisons between being a firefighter and being a superintendent. And this is kind of off a whim, and I've because we often talk about in the construction industry about firefighting. But I do know enough to be dangerous that firefighting is not an actual just running into a burning building and putting out a fire, right? There's more to that. And so, can you take us through the comparisons of being a firefighter versus a superintendent and or the concept of firefighting?
Sure, I could take a swing at it. I never really thought to compare the two. So, you know, for firefighting, it's all about training, muscle memory, and, you know, mitigating the circumstances while making sure that you're safe before you try and, you know, remove people from unsafe situations as well. You know, is scene safety is the number one thing in firefighting. You know, as a superintendent, is the job safe, I guess, would be one comparison. You know, and then the training. I mean, for me, it was all on the job training. I go to college. I learned on the job, and I learned by doing, and I learned from my peers. And firefighting's a lot like that too. When you're a new firefighter and you get to a scene of a fire, you know, the seasoned guy will say, "Grab my boot," and that means you're gonna follow him into the building. It's been a long time since I've actually done that. I stopped doing it in 2019, and really weaned off of it a long time before that in the interest of being present with my son. You know, it kind of circles back to, you know, the limits of giving. You sort of have to triage where you're going to give. But I don't know, as far as the firefighting itself, I mean, in construction, you're right. I don't want to be firefighting. If you're doing that, it's just exhausting and it makes your days longer. If you're constantly having to do that, you're not planning, you're not proactively doing the things, and you don't have the time to build those relationships with your team. You know, but I don't know. It's very organized firefighting, believe me. It looks like chaos, but it's definitely training, repetitive things, always keeping an eye out for safety, you know.
I like that. You don't just run into a burning building, right? You analyze the structure, you figure out, is it safe to enter that building? Do I even need to go in that building? I think there's a lot of thought and strategy that goes into that. And when we can use some of that same concepts and applications in the superintendent world, I think now we're starting to talk about a lean builder here a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit. Well, how would you define a lean builder? Take like what is your definition of what a lean builder is or does?
I guess at the end of the day, it's a little tough for me to wrap it up in a bow for you, but I would say it would be whether it's a trade partner or coworker, it's a person that has those commitments to each other as opposed to the commitments to the project team or the commitment to the superintendent or the CM or the general contractor. That commitment, like, oh, all right, we're committing to each other. So we're both agreeing that we're going to do this. I'm not letting someone else down. I'm letting these 3 crews down if I goof this up or don't do what I said I was going to do. And it's okay for guys to do that, but they need to just let us know, these tools we have. I'm still journeying through this and uploading the information to Lean. I would say I'm not really a novice, but I'm definitely have a lot of information to take in and process here.
Spoken like a true lean builder. I think if you think you're anything but a novice, you're probably not a lean builder. If you think you're an expert, you're probably not a lean builder, right? We're continuing to get better. We're always learning, and we're trying to improve ourselves and the conditions our people are working in. I love it. I love that a lot. So I want to hear more about your lean journey. I've heard continuous improvement a few times, and so I get that kind of aspect of it. But how did you actually get introduced to lean construction and those concepts?
Well, that was pretty fun, actually. I had been at O&G for a little while, a little over a year, and I got assigned to a school project. They renovated his new elementary school job. And when I got there, I just was still doing it the way I was doing it, because my first onboarding was really just to take over a few jobs for other superintendents. And I ran those through the punch list over to completion. And so when I got to this job, it was the standard thing. Let's start looking at the schedule. Let me start setting things up. How are we going to do logistics? And it wasn't until after I was already there for a little while that the project manager says, oh, by the way, we're going to do this lean construction thing.
What?
Yeah, I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. I heard someone in a meeting talking about pull plans at one of the big company meetings. And I'm like, okay, I still don't know what that means, but I'm going to find out. And they said, don't worry, we're going to send someone down. And they did. They sent someone down. It was another project manager who had done this on their job. And he came in and he started talking about lean construction and, the pull plans, and you're going to have boards and they're going to look like this. And he's just holding up his phone and showing me a picture of a board. And he says, I'm going to email you a list of things you need. And he ordered a lot of sticky notes, and off he went. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about this. It was really like pushed into the water, but I wasn't in the water yet because I didn't even know it was a pool, right? It was, I knew nothing about what he was talking about.
And it's a deep pool too.
And so we continued to like, all right, well, I guess when he comes back, we'll figure it out. And so we continued to carry on as normal a little while. And eventually we were like, you know what, this is just not working. Let's just call the office and see what we need to do. And that's when I got introduced to Colin Milberg and Ryan Pott. And,
Dr. Milberg. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We just had him on here not long ago.
I listened to that podcast with intense curiosity. I love that man. He's fantastic. Genius. Fantastic. And Ryan is really he's become my mentor, and we've become friends, I've been out to his house and loaned him my tile saw and helped him how to use it and whatnot. And he's a great guy. Him and his family are beautiful. So Ryan and Colin came out, and I was walked through the lean journey for that project. It was a little under a year and a half project, and they were patient enough with me to give me small bites. I mean, I remember the missteps. I remember like, oh my God, we're going to have to do like trust falls and hug each other. What are we getting into here? And they wanted to bring games to my foreman meeting. And I was like, what are we doing bringing games? I mean, I resisted that, Adam. I resisted it. I was like, that is just going to take so much time away from these guys when they're already, we barely have enough time to do this project. And you want me to take more time. And the daily huddles, I resisted that too. I was like, I don't want to have meetings 5 days a week with these guys. They're going to resist. And I was coming to a conclusion without listening to why they wanted to do that. And obviously I broke that cycle along the way, but that project was such a learning process to get through. Because by the end of that job, we got into that last summer slam for the job, Adam. And it was like, okay, we've got this last summer to get everything done in the previous phases, and then we have to finish the last phase. And with doing that pull plan, we all had that aha moment, like, crap, if we don't extend everything into the last phase now, we're never going to get it done correctly to do it on time or even have access to it to be able to open up these hallways. And it was such a magic moment. And it was really the pull plan that did it. And it was an aha moment for the whole team. I mean, it's where we all kind of bought in to the lean methods in the last planner system was that moment. Because when we did that, we were left with just a fit out for that last phase. And we burned through that at a slow walk with smiles on our faces and Christmas presents at Christmas time. It was wonderful. The school was involved, but we had a different constraint that came up is we were done early, over 2 months. So it's a weird constraint to have, right? But you need to include the owner on this lean journey, because now what are they going to do with the teachers that are off site? Are they ready to occupy all the classrooms and be open 100%? They got to change the buses. They've got to make sure the furniture is actually ready on time because we're 2 months early. It's a variation for them, right? So it was fascinating, and it was such a successful project. I had friends for life from that one. That was a good one. That was my beginning.
What a fantastic story. I love hearing that. The resistance is real, though. Why were you resisting so much?
I was what I recognize now in thinking through myself, like I do a lot of self-analysis today, that I was resistant to, I was leading the question. I was looking for the outcome to get me through. I was still trying to tell everybody what to do, and I was afraid of actually embracing the process. I was uncomfortable making these personalities come through. I mean, one of my biggest changes was I went to FMI Global's Leadership Institute out in Colorado last year. In doing that, I kind of recognized why I was struggling when I interacted with, an introvert versus an extrovert. I'm an extrovert, and if I'm talking to an introvert, it's hard to have those conversations be effective from the other person's perspective if I don't recognize where they're at during the conversation, right? And it was the first steps of understanding that has helped me be a better facilitator for this. But I didn't know that then. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I was just resistant to it. And again, back to Ryan Pop being patient with me and walking me through it and letting me make those mistakes. So.
Well, so again, the resistance is real. And I love hearing, every time I hear that magic moment, there's like a little song, that magic moment, that song.
I do. I'm a big music guy.
Yeah. So that keeps playing in my head, especially when I heard you say those words. I have kind of a couple of questions on my head right now. The first one I'll hit you with is, tell me about that magic moment. Like, tell me more about that. What was the light bulb? How did that turn on? What did that feel like?
Well, for me, it was a slow process to get to that point. I mean, I was given a few books to read. This is Lean, and the Lean Builder obviously was one of them. That one really helped me see it all to the end. It was like a textbook. I still listen to it often. I have it on tape, so I listen to it on the way to work. And but as far as the magic moment, I think it was more like when I finally understood how all the tools of the last planner system work together. That resistance of the daily huddle, the weekly work plans, the make ready. The make ready was the biggest eye opener for me, because when I have those one-on-ones with the trade partners in the trailer to look ahead at not just next week's, but the weeks coming up and some full planning prep, those made the meetings more effective and made everybody kind of come to the table already with the work plan. And I was always a little too sensitive for the time that we were spending on these things. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, was that don't worry about the time so much. If you're getting good communication, you can circle back to that and dial it back in, but go ahead and roll with that good talk. I don't know if I answered your question, Adam, but the aha moment, it kind of organically happened.
Yeah, no, you absolutely nailed the question. I'll ask this one too. How would you go back and convince the old Matt Olshefski to venture down this lean journey a little quicker?
God, I don't know if I could do it other than, walking the walk definitely helps. Being faithful to the process and the systems that we're using, don't blow it off to keep the ship off the rocks, so to speak. And maybe just say that, you think you're keeping the ship off the rocks, but you need to have a system for empowering someone else to take over that weekly work plan process. Someone should be able to do your make ready review in your place, because there's always going to be that, oh crap, I've got a crisis on the other side of the job site and we need to figure it out now. The firefighting, right? There's always the firefighting, and it happens less and less, but it still happens. The bottleneck is what you need to go after, right? But my advice would be, make sure you're bringing your team with you on this journey, and that this isn't something on your shoulders to do by yourself. This is something to share with the entire team, including your trade partners.
How do you define the team?
Well, the team is the trade partners. The team's also the design team, although that aspect's a lot harder to do. Sometimes we get owners' representatives, and that's a difficult aspect to bring in, because you've got trust that you have to worry about, and building that trust is something that just has to take time. Right. So you become vulnerable in a professional way as a company you represent. You have to be cautious with that sometimes, but that doesn't change the process. But the team is definitely the trade partners as the main ingredient. I mean, in the best case world, the mailman should be able to do my job if I get hit by a bus. Right. I mean, the goal, we're not always there, but last year in my last project I was on, I wound up getting COVID, Adam, and I got it, the old school COVID, the OG COVID, right? And I was very sick, very sick. And I wound up being out for several weeks. And when I came back, I couldn't even really go up a ladder or go upstairs. I was in recovery for about a month and a half before I was back to normal again. And another team had to come in and take over my job. And the trade partners and the people on site, my project engineer, everybody that was involved on that second job with Lean, they didn't miss a beat doing it. And that job marched forward. We had plenty of problems, and we actually built 2 schools simultaneously in the middle of a pandemic with 2 teams using Lean on both projects. It was fantastic. My friend Scott Macy, he ran that job wonderfully, and that job had 1 million constraints. My job had 500,000 constraints, and we muscled through it. And it was the Lean, that the last planner system, and the fact that someone could come in and just take over your job when you're out for a month. That's a good sign. That's a real good sign.
I think that's the true measurement of a lean builder right there, right? Can the show go on without you? And if it can, then you have established some pretty good systems and processes really that's the goal, right? Is to get a self-organized system moving in a self-improving way. And when we can do that, we've really won as a lean builder.
Yeah. My book I'm on now is the Leadership and Self-Deception book.
The Arbinger Institute. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one, because am I in the box or out of the box? We all go back in the box is kind of the moral of the story, is that I'm a human being, and sometimes we get in it and this stuff falls by the wayside. I mean, I'm on a project now where we don't have the full team yet. The trades are coming on board. We're about to swing steel, and we'll be jumping in with both feet here in a couple of weeks, right after Thanksgiving, and we're going to be full stop, and we're going to do our best on a short schedule duration to do and place an awful lot of work with some constraints already in place. And I'm not really afraid of it like I would have been before I started doing all this, because I know that at a minimum we'll be able to organize the systems and place some work in a better way, and we're all going to lean on each other here. It's a good thing. It's not a negative thing.
Yeah, a system that we have designed is producing the results that we're getting. And if we want different results, we have to change something within our system to get different results. And so to hear you what you just said was so amazing. Like you just said, I'm not worried anymore. Like you don't have to bear the burden of the whole project because you've got a team of folks who are the experts, who are the professionals, and you've got a system that you've put in place to extract that information from them, put it in an order, and then execute. I mean, did I hear you right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's you heard me right. That doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean that there's going to be more work on weekends, even though we're trying to plan around doing that. It's going to happen. It's not happening because that's what we're expecting. It's happening because that's what the work in place will require. We can work around that. Temporary.
It's an anomaly, right? It's not
Yeah.
okay. Well, so switching gears, maybe we can shout out some people who have made a profound impact in your career. I would love to hear some names or some, tell me about the folks that have made an impact on Matt.
Well, definitely since I've been at O&G, I would say the project manager, Tim Chan, him and I worked together on the last project. And when I got COVID, he was my right-hand man and my champion. And we did these weekly work plans together. There's so many different ways to do this on job sites, and he chose to be all in. And shout out to Tim Chan. You're a mentor to me, and I appreciate our friendship and our working together. And also to Ryan Pop. I mentioned him a few times already, but honestly, he's been a good friend, and I can lean on pretty much any time, personal or work, And the team here at O&G, they've been great at facilitating this. They've asked me to be the lean champion for O&G, and I think we're still learning what that looks like. I wound up sliding into this job to take over for someone who left. And this job will be my priority as we transition to that next role as lean champion. Hopefully I get on some of your superintendent lean coffees before I take on that next role and can't come anymore.
Superintendent only, baby. That's exciting. A lean champion role. You've got a community, a network of people that are willing to do whatever it takes to help you succeed with that. So don't ever hesitate to reach out. We're full of love and ideas and ways where we've went wrong in the past that could maybe help accelerate some of that. So you let me know how we can help from that perspective. Love plugging you in.
Well, I definitely will, and I wear that bracelet you gave me, and I'll remember it, man. It was a good moment. You and me sitting in Jen Lacey's class with Carrie George.
Oh, Carrie George. Yeah, baby. Corpus Christi, Texas. Yeah.
Real
You
cowboy.
have to give me your address and I'll send you some more. Again, somebody who's as selfless as you donating organs, I certainly respect that more than you have any idea and would love to just send you a few more, maybe get one for your anniversary and give one to the wife and just, again, spread love and cheer to everybody.
Absolutely. That's what we do.
Amen. That's what lean builders do. Heck yeah. Well, what's again? We're kind of coming down to the end, but what's a message that you want to get out to the world? If like this is your platform, man, what do you want to say? What's one thing, piece of advice, anything you've got to set our world on fire?
Well, if you ever get presented an opportunity to do this in your workplace, embrace it. It's a good thing. I know I fought it, but I wasn't going to not do it. It was definitely a mandate, right? But it changed how I work and changed how I look at construction in general. I used to have terrible things written about me on the portalet walls, and today I haven't had graffiti on the walls in 4 years, not a bit. And that respect and that care for one another is the real reward. I've had some things happen on job sites and some interactions with just random crews out there and workers in the trades. And those conversations have been priceless, and I take them home with me and I take them to heart. And it's a wonderful reciprocal thing. And it was these practices that kind of opened the door to that. So really it's the relationships that I get from these projects, doing these processes is the best reward. And, I wish that for everyone that is interested in it and more. You obviously can't force it down anyone's throat, but eventually if people get it, there's a lot more of that to go around.
Relationships are everything.
Yeah.
Just people want to matter, and people, when you let people matter, really, really good things happen. And you're clearly a professional at making other people matter. What do you do to make sure that Matt Olshefski matters?
You hit on it in some of your podcasts, that pause and reflect, take a few moments, understand that this takes a strain and you need to kind of be able to let it go. I mean, I love music. I was a deadhead in high school and still listen to it. I listen to everything, Adam, but I love listening to the music sitting at my desk and having those personal conversations, set work aside a little bit at work every day, and, take that lunchtime and use it for yourself. Don't read emails and work through it. Take that time, recharge. Sometimes I'll take a nap just sitting right here at my desk from 12 to 12:15, and it just recharges everything and makes the day so much better. And I'm a better person when I lock the gate and go home to my wife. So when I'm rested and satisfied. So
Amen. Are you familiar with Jennifer and Jesse, the No BS with Jen and Jess?
I am not.
Oh man, we got to get you plugged in. There's a whole community around introducing the people side of lean into the business. And I would say it's probably, I don't know, 60, 70% construction folks. And it's kind of our same concept of No Bullshido. They do No BS with Jen and Jess every other Saturday morning, and it's fantastic. I'll go out there and make sure that I tag you in some of the stuff. And
Yeah, do that.
um, it's a really cool group. We support one another, and on LinkedIn, in person, we're having meetups for breakfast, and just trying to really connect the community. You got some of the major general contractors a part of the group. You get the DPRs, the Turners, like the Brassfield and Gories, the Robbins and Morton, and they're all crossing company lines and sharing information and just really making an effort to change the humanness of construction, right? Like making sure that we're focusing on relationships, not just inside the gate, but outside the gate as well, which again seems like you a big purpose of what your existence. 26 years married, happy anniversary. That's an incredible number. Yeah, I'm blown away. I'm just like, man, you're like my hero. You're like who I aspire to be. You've donated an organ, you've saved somebody's life, you've been married for 26 years, you've got successful children, an awesome job, you're comfortable with who you are. Like I am I am so happy we met in New Orleans. I'm looking forward to just learning more from you. Where else do you want to take this? What else do you want to get out to the world?
I'm kind of at a loss for words, to be honest, but I feel with what you just said is reciprocal. I got a lot of respect for you, and when I listen to your podcast, I definitely say, man, someday I want to know as much as that guy knows about all of this.
Well, I think that's kind of the grass is greener type of concept, right?
Yeah, there's always stuff to work on, right?
Amen. Well, I want to come visit you on the job site. I heard some of those backup alarms during this podcast, and there's nothing I love more than a good old backup alarm or some construction noise.
Well, you find yourself in Connecticut, you've got an open invitation, and there's always a pot of coffee in my trailer for anyone that walks in. So
At any time.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate your time. And again, I just look forward to continuing my lean journey and learning with you.
All right, brother. You take care. Thank you for having me on.